Hello everyone, welcome back. In the previous video, we had completed actually showing up a message bubble inside of our conversation page. And now in this video, before we proceed further to developing the UI of our conversation page, I would like to actually get data from Firebase for a conversation that we are currently looking at. So without anything further to do, let's get into it. So the way we're going to do this is that we are first going to create a new function inside of our database service. And this function is going to be responsible for actually getting our conversation data. And then after we have this data, then we're going to use this data to actually populate the list view inside of our conversation page. So without anything further to do, let's get into it. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to go to the bottom of our DB service, and here I'm going to create a new function. The first function is going to return a stream, and for now we'll call this function get conversation. Once we have this, what we're going to do is that we are going to be passed in a conversation ID. And after we have the conversation ID, we'll firstly define the reference to the actual document that we want to get. In this case, it will be database.collection, and then inside of our collection, we'll use the conversation collection. And then from there, we'll go to our actual document, which is going to be our conversation ID. Now, let's just go and see if, yes, we define our conversations collection. So just gotta update this, go conversations collections. So once we have the reference defined, the next thing we are going to do is that we are going to return the actual data. So the way I'm going to do this is that I'll do reference dot, and then we'll get these snapshots. And once we have the snapshots, we'll return them. But as we've done in previous videos, our snapshots are going to return us a stream of document snapshot, and we want to give some structure to our data. And we also want to have intelligence actually helping us and aiding us out in our app development and actually showing us the data that we have. So to fix that, what we can do is that we can model a conversation, and then we can actually take the data that we got from Firebase, we can create a new object from it, which would be our conversation model. And then from there, we can actually have more structure to our data. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to the conversation.dart file that we created for our conversation snippet, and I'm going to create a new class here, and I'm going to call our class our conversation class. And this class is going to be storing different data from our actual conversation snippet class, because this class is going to be responsible for actually storing all of the conversation data. So what we're going to do is that we're going to name our class conversation. And then inside of our class, we are firstly going to define some of the attributes of our conversation. So firstly, we'll have a final string of an ID. So the ID of our conversation. We'll also have a final and list of string, which will be our members. So the members of our actual conversation. We'll have a final and then list, and then we'll create a new list of messages, and we'll call this message. So we'll create this message class. Then we'll have a final and string, and this will be our actual chats or conversations owner ID. With that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create the constructor for our conversation. So we'll have conversation, and then inside of here, I'm going to add these curly brackets. And then inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this.id, this.members, this.owner ID, and this.messages. And add a space here and do Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to quickly create our actual message. So to do that, what we'll do is that inside of our models, we'll create a new file, and we'll call our message.dart. With this, what we're going to do is that we are going to create a new message class in here. So firstly, I'll import the Cloud Firestore package. Once we have that, I'm going to create the class, and I'll call our class message. So this message class is going to model each message that we get. And then our message is going to have some properties. So firstly, we'll have a final string, and we'll have sender ID. Then we have a final string, and this will be the content of our message. We have a final timestamp. So this would be the timestamp of when the message was sent. And then finally, we'll have a new type that we'll define, which will be message type, and we'll type it type. And then what we are going to do is to define our message type. We won't create a class, but we would create an enumeration, and enumeration would be message type. So message type, And then our enumeration is going to have two values. So either our message can be text or our message could be an image. With that, I'm going to go down and I'm going to create the actual constructor for our message class. And this constructor is going to be this dot, and then we'll have the sender ID, then the this dot content, then the timestamp. And then finally we'll have this dot type. With that, I'm going to add the semicolon. I'll do Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. So now what we can do is that we can go back to our conversations model and we can import our actual message model. So // and then we can have actual models and then the message.dart and Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. Hopefully the error should be resolved. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a factory method which will allow us to create a conversation instance from our Firestore document snapshot. For that, we'll firstly define our message, do message dot, and then the factory method's name that we want to use. In our case, I would like to use from Firestore. And then inside of here, I'll be getting a document snapshot, which will say snapshot. And once we get the snapshot, what we're going to do is that we're going to use the data that we get from our snapshot and actually create this conversation instance. And I have to change this from actual not message to conversation, actually conversation dot from Firestore. So with that, I'm going to firstly take the data from our snapshot. So I'll do data equals to underscore snapshot dot data. Okay, so once we have the data, the next thing we are going to do is that we're going to return a actual conversation. So I'm going to do conversation. With that, what we can do is that we can actually define the properties that our conversation is going to have. So our conversation needs an ID, which we'll set as our actual snapshot dot document ID. The next thing we'll need is our members. So that would be our data and then the actual members key, which stores our members arrays of mem and burs. And then after that, what we'll need is actually our owner ID. So that will be owner ID and that will be underscore data and then owner ID. And finally, we'll need our list of messages. So how do we get those messages? Well, what we're going to do is that firstly, we're going to get the messages. So I'll create a list variable and this variable, we'll call it messages. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to get the messages from our data messages. And once we have the messages, what we're going to do is that we are going to firstly check to see if we have any messages. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to do if underscore messages is not equal to null, so that we actually have some messages. So if we have some messages, what we're going to do is that we're going to set our messages equal to a new list. And this new list is going to be a list of our actual message document. So to do this, we'll take our messages, we'll map them, and we'll get a message. And then for each message, we are going to return. Inside of here, we'll return firstly a message instance. And our message firstly would need a sender ID. So you can do control space to see all the available properties. I'll do sender ID and that will be underscore M and then sender ID. Then we'll have the actual content. So that would be underscore M and then the content. Then we'll have the timestamp. So that would be underscore M and then the timestamp. And then finally, the last thing we would need is the actual type of our message. So how do we determine the type of our message? Well, what we're going to do is that we're going to check to see what the type of our message is. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to firstly check our message type. So I'm going to create a new variable and I'll call this our message type. And we'll perform a tertiary check. So we'll do like underscore type. If our type is equals to, let's say text, then our message type is going to be text, else our message type is going to be an image. With that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take our message type and I'll put that here for our type. I'll do Alt-Shift-F, or before that we have to add this semicolon here and add a comma here. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is that we're going to get an error, and to fix this error, we have to then map it to a list. And with this, we should be taking in all of the messages that we get inside of our messages array, and then we'll convert each message into a actual message instance. And then once we have this, what we're going to do is that we are actually going to give these messages to the actual conversation. And then I'm going to add a semicolon here and do Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. But what happens if our conversation doesn't have any messages? Well, for that, what we're going to do is that we're going to have an else statement, and we'll set our messages to null. And with that, we can do Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. So now we have a function that can create a conversation from a Firestore document snapshot that we get. So now what I'm going to do is that I am going to go back to our database.service file, and I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to actually make sure that we import our conversation file, which has our conversation model inside of it. And then for the reference that we were getting, what we would do is that we would convert each document snapshot to a new stream of actual conversation. So to do that, we'll get a snapshot. And then what we'll do is that we are going to, inside of here, return, and what will we return? Well, we'll return the actual conversation dot and from Firestore, and then we'll send in the snapshot, and we can do Alt-Shift-F, Command, save. And now in the next video, we'll actually get our conversation page actually displaying that data. So with that, I'm going to end this video here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.